Hello, this is Red Decks Win, a podcast for the best color in Magic the Gathering. I'm Josh, and this is the last episode I plan to do. I'll talk about stopping the podcast here at the end of this episode. I'll put a timestamp and everything in the description if you want to skip to that part and listen to it first. But right now, though, we still got some more mono red to talk about. Let's talk about Red Mythic Dragons. Red Mythic Dragons are big, epic Timmy cards. And if you've heard this podcast before, we're only going to talk about the mono red ones. So the mono red, specifically Mythic Dragons is what we're looking at today. There's been an increase of them lately. There's been an increase of all Mythics lately. It went from 15 to 20 a set back in Zendikar Rising. But anyways, going back to that Timmy side of the card, when you're a kid and you're trying to find a cool, valuable card that you hope you got out of that pack you saved your money up for, or maybe your parents bought for you, you want a card that's instantly desirable and looks cool. One problem with Magic is, compared to other trading card games, sometimes the most valuable cards in Magic the Gathering, they look lame comparatively, like the big artifacts that are worth a ton of money, or fetch lands, or the legacy lands. You look at it and it's like, oh, it's an island with some fire on it. How much is that worth again? And people really have a hard time understanding it. And at least internally for me, I have a harder time justifying the purchase to myself if I don't think the card art looks cool. But you look at big red Mythic Dragons, and like Blue Eyes White Dragon in Yu-Gi-Oh! Or holographic Pokemon EX or VMAX cards, when you see a Mythic Dragon art, you know why it's desirable. And it's easier to go, oh, I spent $15 on this card. People are like, oh, okay, that makes sense. It's really cool looking and looks rare and valuable. And I'll be honest here at the beginning, I don't have a lot of experience playing Mythic Dragons or too many dragon decks in general over the years of playing Magic. I think they're a very satisfying card to play the few times I've messed with them in some Commander games. Dragons put in some big work, and when you compare them to other competitive strategies you see in Red, like Burn or Goblins, you only need one big dragon to really wreak havoc, swing the game in your favor. So anyways, I'm not going to be like, oh, here's the perfect way to play this dragon and be the most competitive with it, because I don't know. So here's stats and things about these red Mythic Dragons that I found interesting. In Magic the Gathering's history, there are 112 red dragons, and 23 of them are Mythic. Of those Mythics, 6 of them are currently legal in Standard, and 8 of them have been printed in the last 2 years. So if you wanted a Standard deck with 24 Mythic Red Dragons in it right now, I don't think it'll work out great for you, but hey, you can do it. Of these Mythic rares, a couple of them were originally printed at Rare. World Gorger Dragon, originally a rare for Judgment, and Reuse, the Falling Star, was rare in Champions of Kamigawa. Same goes for Bogarden Hellkite in Time Spiral originally. That was printed at Rare. A lot of these Mythic Dragons, they've held their value in terms of dollar amount, and part of that is because a decent amount of these, like I said, are in Standard. And if they have rotated, they see some play as big heavy hitters in Commander games. The cheapest red Mythic Dragon you can get is Bogarden Hellkite. It's going for 25 cents, less than $1. Get yourself a cool looking Mythic Red Dragon. Most expensive, no surprise, Goldspan Dragon. Cheapest price I see for it online these days is about $30. Some versions of it go up to $40. And speaking of alternate versions, Inferno of the Spellmounts, the special promo of that, just like a lot of the special promo cards from Adventures of the Forgotten Realms with the ampersand, Dungeons & Dragons logo carved into it, well, that one is going for $200, but that's more of a case of collecting than the card's worth in terms of gameplay. So technically, Inferno of the Spellmounts most expensive, but in terms of regular art, Goldspan Dragon at $30. But like I said, these have held their value pretty well. 9 of these red dragons are worth over $5. 3 of those that are worth over $5, they are in Standard right now, so that price will probably go down with rotation. Goldspan Dragon. It's kind of like talking about Tom Brady. Everybody gets it. It's great. For 3 red, if you don't know, you get a creature dragon with flying and haste. It's a 4/4. Whenever Goldspan Dragon attacks or becomes the target of a spell, create a treasure token. Treasures you control have tap this, sacrifice this artifact, add 2 mana of any one color. Pretty obvious to see why this is great. I had to mention it and give some context. If people are listening, I figure in the future, or whatever the case may be, or you're unfamiliar with the card. But yeah, it has been a big, important, one of the top cards in Standard for a while now, since Kaldheim last year. Other gameplay things with these red Mythic Dragons, 3 of them have the classic fire-breathing effect, where you put 1 red mana into it, and it gets +1/+0 until end of turn. And with those fire-breathing effects, 2 of them do a little something extra. With Moonveil Dragon, when you put 1 red mana into it, each creature you control gets +1/+0 until end of turn, as opposed to just Moonveil. And Inferno of the Star Mounts getting a special ability if you pump enough red mana into it. And we'll get more into that a little bit later. All red Mythic Dragons have flying, that's no surprise. 6 of them have an enter the battlefield effect where you instantly start getting things going. And 5 of them, when they die or leave the battlefield, have powerful effects. Plenty of words on all these cards, as you'd expect for a big, powerful Mythic. Makes them feel important. Least amount of words on any of these red dragons, unless you're counting flavor text and reminder text. We've got Furyborn Hellkite, which is a 6/6 for 4 red, with Bloodthirst 6 and flying. And Bloodthirst 6 means if an opponent was dealt damage this turn, this creature enters the battlefield with 6 +1/+1 counters on it. Hellkite Tyrant's got the unique effect of being able to just win the game with the text written on the card. It is a 4 red creature dragon, a 6/5, flying and trample, and then whenever Hellkite Tyrant deals combat damage to a player, gain control of all artifacts that player controls. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 20 or more artifacts, you win the game. Now, 20 is a big number of artifacts to get, but it's definitely possible in Commander, and it gives you some hope in Commander games when it's like, well, my board state might not be great, but if everything works out and people ignore me, maybe Hellkite Tyrant can get me through. Once again, we're mentioning Inferno of the Star Mounts because, like I mentioned, it's got that fire-breathing effect. You pay 1 red, Inferno of the Star Mounts gets +1/+0, and that's until end of turn. However, when its power becomes 20 this way, and it starts out as a 6/6, it deals 20 damage to any target. So, yeah, obviously, starting life total, if they didn't adjust it, boom, you get them. Well, at least in a regular game, and in Commander, you're going to have to work for it a little more. And another way that kind of is a pseudo win the game on the spot effect written on the card with Inferno of the Star Mounts. An odd thing, too, with these Mythic Red Dragons is 8 of them have Hellkite in the name, while only 7 of them say dragon in the name. I looked up the definition for Hellkite, and Dictionary.com is telling me it's an old archaic word meaning a fiendishly cruel and wicked person. When I hear Hellkite and think about the word, I picture a child's kite on a nice spring day, but it's being evil and breathing fire down on everybody. Because of all the text you find on Red Mythic Dragons, there's not a lot of room for flavor text, but 7 of them have some flavor for you, and I will mention those now as we wind down on talking about Red Dragons. Balefire Dragon. If it comes for you, you die boldly or die swiftly, for die you will. Utvera Hellkite. The fear of dragons is as old and as powerful as the fear of death itself. Inferno of the Star Mounts. The ancient dragon Imveraharo, I don't know how to pronounce that, has earned his fiery nickname. Avaricious Dragon. Waste follows want. Moonveil Dragon. Their hearts beat, their lungs draw breath, and they have one true form. I count them as allies of the living. Thalia, Knight Cathar. Hellkite Courser. The charge was heralded not by horns, but by the dragon's echoing roar. And finally, Furyborn Hellkite. Careful, a drop of blood here means death for us all. Kalak, Mountain Guide. Red Mythic Dragons. They're the big enders, majestic and intimidating with their power, art, and price sometimes. Breathe fire and burn down your enemies with red dragons. All right, now the conclusion of this episode and the conclusion of this podcast, I wanted to talk about ending the podcast. Maybe I'll bring back Red Decks Win in the future, but I don't expect I will. So what are the reasons I'm ending the podcast? Well, one that definitely makes sense to end it for is I haven't been playing Magic lately. I live about an hour away from any game stores where I can play people in person, and I don't want to be spending as much money at the time on Magic the Gathering and gas money to get there, all that. And Magic Online, I don't really want to get into or spend the money on that. And it's somewhat similar with Magic Arena. It seems expensive, and it seems like Magic Arena has become more unrewarding since I started messing with it last year, especially with the addition of Alchemy. That was kind of demoralizing to me. There's no safety now, it feels like, in crafting cards in Magic Arena. But anyways, with all that being said, I'm not quitting Magic the Gathering or denouncing the game. I definitely plan to play later, and maybe I'll get more enthusiastic, get back into the game. But right now, I'm not playing or buying cards, and it feels kind of silly to be making a podcast where you're telling people passionate about Magic the Gathering, oh, I'm passionate too. I don't know. It felt like a layer of pretend, and it felt outside of my interest. And another big part of ending the podcast, work and other things in my life, they're taking up my time, as they do for everybody. I've got other creative projects I want to work at. I've been more involved at my church. That's taken up more time. And another reason and observation I wanted to give out there after doing this show for now 13 episodes, that I painted myself into a red corner maybe a bit too much. Casual mono red, there's more of a market for that than any other color, like casual mono green or mono blue, for example. But still, the casual mono red Magic players, it's a small crowd somewhat. I think there's people who have really understood this podcast and really liked it, but there's not a lot of broader appeal to people. And it's tricky with podcast, and it's the battle of all media. You don't want to be so generic that anybody with a bigger budget or more talent can just swoop in and make a way better thing and nobody pays attention to you. And you don't want to be so specific that nobody's interested. And I'm not saying nobody's interested. I appreciate the audience I have been getting. And I just posted this on Reddit and a burned Facebook group, and that was about it. And I think one of the episodes got like 50 views or whatever. So I'm definitely happy with that. I'm not trying to say, oh, I didn't get anybody and my plan was to go worldwide with this or anything. So those are my reasons why I'm stopping this podcast. It's definitely been fun doing this podcast. I've learned more details about Red, and I've gotten more involved and invested in some of the lore of Magic the Gathering. Producing this has helped me learn more about podcasting and making audio stuff. I had some experience before, but it's definitely helped, and it's helped me be more articulate and outline things better. If you're interested, I might make another podcast, but it's probably not going to be Magic the Gathering related. It'll be some kind of different thing. I made one episode or 8-minute short thing about the worst baseball card of all time, and I had fun making that. So I'm thinking about making more short podcast episodes, maybe more about the worst things or hidden value and kind of life lessons and morals in weird places. That's just one idea of a direction I might go. I don't know where that's going for sure. Other things I've been doing, I've been making music with a garage band of two very close friends. I've been writing more songs as well that for myself that I've just been recording and posting online. I'm a radio DJ part-time doing that. And there's Toastmasters, which I don't think you've heard of, but you can Google them, learn more about them. And it's a public speaking practice group. So I say all that to say I'm getting plenty of speaking and singing experience and plans and articulation and all of that good stuff. I've rambled more in this episode and been a little more off the cuff than some episodes where I've more tightly scripted. But I'm saying all this, and I made this episode because I've come across occasionally when you search for podcasts, there'll be a small podcast where they don't have a huge following or whatever, but like, you know, there's loyal listeners and there's people that really enjoy it, or I've really enjoyed it, and then it's like they just don't update ever again. And you always kind of wonder, well, what happened? And you don't need some great dramatic story, but it gives me a sense of closure if they had just made an episode more like this, where it's like, okay, I'm ending it, here's why, and it's not like a hard feelings thing or whatever, it's just closure. I hope you continue playing red in Magic the Gathering, or appreciate red more as a fun, cool, and meaningful color. I hope a red-focused podcast comes along in the future, definitely, and keeps things going. In some ways, the red in Magic the Gathering, I still see it in my life now. In other trading card games, I've been playing online Legends of Runeterra, and there's some direct damage aggro creatures win strategies that are pretty successful and I've had a lot of fun with. I've found the free-to-play system way more rewarding there, and you get more out of it than you do in Magic Arena in terms of getting the cards you want. And maybe they'll mess Legends of Runeterra and all those benefits I listed up later, but right now, it's still pretty cool. I'd recommend checking it out if you like Magic, or maybe feel burned by Arena, or whatever the case may be. So I see red in another trading card game. I also see red in myself when playing music, getting that passion out, producing art. Both Lorehold and Prismari lore from the Strixhaven set have that using of value from the past, looking at what's been overlooked, and making something spectacular out of that, or at least attempting to make art. Well, that's all I've got for you. God bless. Play mountains, climb mountains, conquer mountains.